I'm going to start in with the description of the Hyperwarp Navigator. This is a common crew job. You'll start with several of these on your ship. These can be acquired through contacts, but they can also be found on most worlds that have an economy of greater than 5, which most worlds will have. You have to have a certain population threshold for all of these, but that's usually omitted from these descriptions. You cannot start a captain with this profession. It's just a really common job. The primary skill that they offer is navigation. Navigation is good for a lot of skill checks, but also is important for um, maneuvering in positions 5 and 4 in ship combat, and your accuracy with your weapons in ship combat. Tactics also provide some accuracy in ship combat, but also tactics applies a little bit to just about everything. It's a very strong skill. It doesn't have a cap on it, so that makes it very nice to stack up lots of. Luckily, a lot of different ships will require good navigation skills in order to be successful, and you'll get a bunch of tactics for free in the process. And that's usually how I'm able to load up on tactics skills, just through hyperwarp navigators and maybe a couple commanders or military officers. It's usually all the tactics I need. It's not a skill that I really have to focus. All right, let's go through the talents. The first talent that I'm going to talk about is the read charts. This is a save for a navigation test. Failing navigation tests in deep space isn't great to have happen, but it isn't terrible either, except when you are doing a hyperwarp jump. In these situations, you're going to take some extra component damage, crew damage. I'm not sure if crew loses morale, but you definitely add to the amount of time that you just spent in hyperwarp, which means your missions are going to be delayed, potentially, and the difficulty curve is going to pass you up a bit. And it'll use a whole bunch of extra fuel as well. So it gets really nasty when you fail those saves. The current UI, it was recently updated to display when you have at least one navigation save ready before you do a jump. Do check that before you jump. Make sure you always have a navigation save ready. If you don't and you need to make that jump, try to see the difficulty on the gate and hope it's a 3 or lower. If it's not, then you really should delay. Go do some orbital operations or whatever until your navigation save comes back. I usually get 2 of these right off the bat. Later in the game, I like to have 3 handy total. That's a good number for it, I think. Fast Getaway. This is an interesting talent, but it's not my favorite. This is the Navigator's option to help escape ship combat once you've entered into it. It only works from position 5, as is shown over here. It gives you 20 escape, which is its main perk. It'll last for 2 turns, basically 2 escape attempts. The way these buffs displays, it'll show up at the beginning of your turn, but you don't escape to the end of your turn, so you truly just get 2 bonus escape attempts, or rather, augmented escape attempts due to this talent. Each adding 20 escape, which is quite a bit. And it gives you 5% armor, 5% shielding, which will apply immediately, which will give you a little bit of defense, or sorry, I don't mean to overload that term, give you a little survivability against some attacks that might hit you before you're able to escape. My complaint with this talent is that there are so many other better escape talents that don't have nearly as many restrictions, others that can be used from other ranges that add more to your range change plus escape, which is really what you need to escape, is the combination of those two. And they'll last for longer. I really don't even choose this talent at all, as just about every other escape option is better. There is an extremely rare use case where you need exactly this much escape to get away. You're going to do it in the next 2 turns, and the extra shielding and armor will be slightly better than if you had done another talent, but it is very rare to come across that corner case. All right, another good talent, Efficient Route. This one will reduce your fuel cost across hyperwarp jumps by 4 plus whatever the navigation skill is. This isn't like reduces up to, this is reduces by that amount. So if you have 8 navigation, you have 12 fuel saved. This can help a lot if you have jump saving talents, components that decrease jump cost instead of increase. You can actually get your jump cost to as low as 1 fuel. It will not go lower. That can be really nice when you're running a trading ship that has a fuel efficiency of 1 fuel per AU. That can make you just go forever. You can go through 2 quadrants that are hostile without any worries, without refueling. So that can be really powerful talent in saving you money and time stopping it to fuel up. I usually get 2 of these by the end of the game, but 1 relatively early on. It's not a must-have, but it's quite nice. Initially, when you get it, it's going to save you 8 fuel, which isn't as big of a deal, but later on, it saves you quite a lot. Storm Navigator is a strong talent. It is identical to the talent E-Tech has, but they're both very valuable in that they'll protect you from damage from radiation storms completely, and they will protect you partially from ion storms, which are local to the system, so they only come into play when you go into orbit of a system experiencing it, whereas radiation storm applies to an entire quadrant. They're a lot harder to avoid, sometimes impossible. It has a short cooldown. I generally don't need to get this until my navigators are at least rank 5, and then I might go back and start selecting these because radiation storms and ion storms are delayed at the beginning of the game, so you don't run into them right off the bat. But eventually you will need these. And depending on your ship speed, your engine speed, smaller ships tend to have faster speed on their engines, you'll need between 4 and 6 or 7 of these by the end of the game. Exacting Design is a talent I only ever take 1 of, and it's not a priority. It gives you a tactics save, but I generally have so much tactics that it's not a big deal. And tactics saves are not super common in deep space or in orbital operations, so it tends not to be a huge deal if they fail. This is just kind of a nice to have on the rare chance that you're going to get one and you happen to fail it despite having a large pool. But really, 1 of these is enough for the entire game, I feel. Not the strongest talent, but it is nice. Orderly Drop is convenient. You'll get at rank 5. It'll reduce your operation time to 1 turn when you land. This applies when you are not landing at an orbital. It also lowers the fuel cost to 1, down from what can be potentially quite a lot, like 19 fuel. Orbitals always have this for free, and so this won't trigger on those. Won't talent. This talent won't go on cooldown when you are landing at an orbital. That's one advantage to landing at orbitals, especially if they have a good shipyard. You can fuel up for relatively cheap, and it doesn't take long. It doesn't take much fuel to do the landing itself. But this is nice to have, and if you're going to be doing a lot of trading within a system, like from one planet to its orbital, back and forth, to just because they have complementary demand and supplies, then this becomes valuable to have more than 2 of. Otherwise, 2 is usually sufficient because a 3-week cooldown is pretty good. But this can save you a lot of time and money. I usually get 1 of these as soon as it's available, but other jobs have a similar talent anyway. So among them all, just get a couple. Perfected Approach. This is a good ship combat talent. It'll give you +1 reactor point, which you cannot use the turn that you are selecting the talent, because the buff won't be applied until the beginning of your turn, which is after you click the button. But that does help the following 2 turns. You'll have an extra reactor point, which can sometimes be the difference between firing a weapon and not, or making a move change or not. It also importantly, gives you a little bit of shield, which can, shield helps defend your components and ship and crew. But it gives you a massive amount of range change at the expense of some escape. So this is really used for advancing. Trying to maintain your position with this is inefficient. Retreating with this is not the greatest idea. There are plenty of talents that are great at escaping. Even fast getaway is better at that point. Perfected Approach is just advancing, but you're not in a huge hurry, or else you'd probably be using Twitch Surge, and maybe you're trying to fire off some extra weapons with that extra reactor point. So it's a good all-around talent. It's not a must-have, but it can be nice. Jammer Warfare, this is used for small craft combat, since that hasn't been released in the form where the opponent has small craft. I'm not going to go into this. Distant Commission. Now we're on to the rank 8 talents. This one applies as soon as you have a mission that requires more than 4 hyperwarp jumps total. The payment for the whole thing gets increased by 3% bonus per jump. So right away, more than 4 hyperwarp jumps, you're talking about a 5-jump mission, at least. That's at least a 15% bonus, and that can go up to 30% bonus. This can be very sizable when you're taking an expensive mission to begin with. It's like 16 jumps total. Well, adding 30% onto that large amount can make for a massive mission payout. This is a good talent to have. In fact, it's probably better to defer these really long-range missions if you can avoid them until you have this talent. Talk of Far Worlds has a long cooldown, but gives you a very easy way to get new contacts, and that is when you're on leaving the Spice Hall, 10% plus navigation chance to learn a new contact intro. Now, this will only go on cooldown like other talents of its ilk. This will only go on cooldown if it succeeds. Otherwise, it won't trigger, and it won't go on cooldown. Which means you get to keep using it. Every time you click Spice, every one of your navigators with this talent will get a chance at it until one of them gets it, and that one of them goes on cooldown. The others are still available for the next try. And with all spicing talents, it does not require the crew that have low morale that are benefiting from the spice to be the ones that are using the talent. You don't. If anyone in your crew has the spice talent, it'll have a chance of triggering, even if they're not the ones that you're spicing to get their morale up. They just happen to be there as well. Heart rank 11, the most famous talent in the game, Skip Off the Void, has a 9 weeks cooldown, which still seems kind of short, given how powerful this was. I think at one point this had a 3-week cooldown, which was an accident. It was great. This will allow you to escape any combat encounter in the game. Maybe the day will come when this won't be the case. There's some fun thoughts on the forums about this shouldn't work inside radiation storms or should be really devastating if it's used then. I think that'd be a fun change. I'd probably be unpopular with some people though. So this will give it's a get out of jail free card. It does come with a cost. You have 60% damage to your drive, which can make it impossible to use a second time potentially. If you've taken 60% damage and then some small thing comes along and does 1% more damage, well, you can no longer use your hyperwarp drive, meaning you can't use Skip Off the Void. Or just using this twice in a row, you're probably not going to be able to use it a third time. Anyway, it gets mitigated by the navigation skill. So a higher tier navigator will be hitting the lower end of this curve rather than the higher. And it burns fuel equal to hyperwarp jump, which on some ships can be quite expensive. On others, not as bad. Now, this does not play with efficient route or other talents like it, so you're paying the full price, not the discounted price from your hyperwarp jump talents. So this does some damage. It to yourself, burns some fuel, but really it's a way to escape Xeno. A lot of games try to get to Skip Off the Void before they encounter their first Xenocraft. I used to be in that boat. It was really hard to try to get to rank 11 on a navigator fast enough before the Xeno reached me on impossible difficulty. Now I feel much more confident I can escape from Xeno without the need of this crutch. But it's still nice to have in your back pocket just in case everything's going south. Many players will have 2 of these talents just in case things are really bad. You generally try to repair and refuel as soon as you can. If you don't have enough fuel for hyperwarp jump, you can't use the talent. So that's another disadvantage. If you're running a little low and Xeno hits you, well, you're going to have to learn what it's like to fight Xeno without Skip Off the Void to save you. Another note about Xeno. If you skip off the Void against Xeno, you do not get experience for surviving the encounter. If you escape them in combat, you'll get like 240 experience, which is quite a lot, just for surviving and escaping. I had that happen earlier today when I just retreated, took no damage in combat, and escaped 240 experience. Great. All right, rank 15. This is a fun one because it's one that I designed and had accepted. Thank you, Andrew. Flash Charge. This is somewhat popular, but maybe I'm just biased in hearing what I want to hear. Also has a 9-week cooldown. It's kind of the sister talent to Skip Off the Void. Uses a shorter hyperwarp burst to charge an enemy ship. You'll start battle at range 4 or 3, depending on your engine agility test. It's not consistent, but the better your engine agility is compared to your opponent's engine agility, the higher the you'll end at range 3. This is extremely valuable for boarding strategies and for anyone that really wants to start at mid-range in combat or get to close range and start attacking with gravity cannons as soon as possible. It does cause a modest amount of damage, 5 to 15% damage to your hyperwarp drive. That's not a huge deal. And it burns fuel equal to a quarter of a hyperwarp jump. So you're spending a little bit of fuel, and if you're really low on fuel, you really still can't use it. But in general, this is much more useful than Skip Off the Void. Much more palatable post-combat, especially if you have a crew dog that can just patch it up afterward. And starting at range 4 can help with missile builds, range 3 with a lot of railguns, and getting to boarding quickly. Flash Charge followed by a Twitch Surge, and sometimes you can get up range 1 boarding with all your talents available.